Hey, what's up, guys? I hope you're enjoying the Be the Difference podcast. If you are, I got a huge favor to ask. Go on to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review for us. It helps us immensely with algorithms and growth because we grow completely by word of mouth, organically. That's why there are no ads. Also, feel free to share this content with somebody you think might get value out of it. Last, if you don't know, I also do coaching to help people become the best version of themselves, starting with physical fitness, going all the way through mindset, sales, and leadership. If you're interested in learning more, there's going to be a link in the description of the podcast. You can schedule a time. It's a free assessment. All I'm going to do is have a conversation with you and see if I can even help you. I look forward to speaking to all of you. Continue to enjoy the podcast, and remember to always be the difference. What's up, everybody? This is Greg with Delta, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. We bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Mr. Lion Goodman. Lion, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Greg. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so happy to have you here. This is going to be a great podcast. I'm really, really excited to kind of dig into your story and have you teach the audience a little bit about your experiences. And for those that don't know Lion, he is the founder of the Clear Beliefs Institute of Trauma-Informed Therapeutic Coaching with graduates in 45 countries. He has had 40 years experience as a transformational coach, healer, and teacher. His Clear Beliefs methodology is designed to delete limiting beliefs, childhood wounds, and traumas from the core of the psyche. Lion is the author of 5 books, including Clear Your Clients' Limiting Beliefs, Creating on Purpose, and Menlightenment. He has taught workshops on 4 continents, and his writings have been widely published in books, magazines, and websites. His students and clients report rapid and profound transformation from his methodology, freeing them to be happier, healthier, and more successful. Now, this is going to be good. I'm excited.
It's great to be here, and I really feel like we're already brothers. We're already on the same path, trying to help people become those things, become the best they can be.
Become the best version of themselves. Absolutely. That's what it's all about. And so tell us a little about, how did you start this, Lion? Where did this journey begin?
Wow. Well, I was born at a very early age. That's my joke for the just start to answer that question. When I was a kid, I knew I was weird because I didn't fit in, and I didn't really know how to make friends or be a friend. And so I was pretty much alone. I was kind of isolated, and I watched other kids trying to figure out how were they the way they were, because I felt different. I didn't feel included. And so I think I became a psychologist in elementary school.
Okay.
And then I got interested in the mind because I was observing other people. And so I read about the mind. And my dad gave me a book when I was 12 years old about Edgar Cayce and his life readings of past lives.
Yeah.
And I read part of that and I went, oh yeah, I remember that. And I closed the book. And so I had this sort of inner knowing that was part of life, that we reincarnate and we come back again and again. And then I got interested in psychic phenomenon, and I found a book, How to Make ESP Work for You. And I began practicing telepathy with my girlfriend at the time, the age of 13. And I got pretty good at it. Scared a couple of kids when I told them what they were thinking. And so that was like an early push into this field of inner work and inner psychology.
Yeah.
When I got to college, I studied everything I could about human consciousness. In fact, I got my degree in consciousness studies way back in 1975. I was studying neurology at that time and psychology of all kinds and biology and all the sciences, because I really wanted to understand what is the nature of human nature.
Yeah.
What is the nature of human motivation? Why do we do what we do? How do we end up like we end up? And so that's been my quest really my whole life. And then when I was 26, I was almost killed by a guy who was shooting at me, and that changed my life. And I wanted to ground myself, so I became a headhunter, which is kind of ironic after having my head hunted to become a headhunter. So I did that career for 25 years. And all during that time, I was also continuing my exploration of consciousness, the mind, spirituality. I took more than 100 workshops and trainings, did decades of shamanic practices and meditation and yoga and all those things. So really, I've been an explorer since the beginning.
Yeah.
And maybe since before the beginning, who knows? So, and over that time, I was really trying to fix myself. What does it take to be the best human I can be? And also during that time, I realized I had gathered these tools that were really effective for creating change.
Mm.
And one day, one particular inner tool downloaded into me because I asked spirit or source, hey, I need a process for changing beliefs permanently and completely because most of these techniques aren't working very well. And I got this download, kind of like, I saw it all in front of me. And I went, oh, that's pretty interesting. I wonder if that could work. And it turned out that was really effective. I began teaching it. That brought me to teaching these methodologies to others. At the same time, went from being a headhunter to being a coach. So that's the very short version of a very long history.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I want to hear more about this ESP when you were a kid. I want to break it. That's so fascinating to me.
I don't know what grabbed my interest. I think it was wanting to have some power.
Okay.
I felt very powerless as a kid. So if I could read other people better, then I would have some advantage over them. I think that was actually the underlying motivation. So when I found this book, I had my first girlfriend at the age of 13. And so we would spend time on the phone trying to guess each other's thoughts and that kind of thing. And I was doing experiments on my own mind, doing things like turning off the lights and walking across the room and picking up an object that I could sense, right, rather than see. So I was really an explorer. And then of course, I got into drugs and explored psychedelics and that kind of thing, because that was another way of looking into my own mind and trying to understand it. So by the time I got to college, I was already a pretty big explorer. You asked about the ESP thing. So I remember in junior high school, after having practiced this, I was talking to another kid, and I looked in his eyes and I said, "Wow, you had a really big argument with your mom this morning." And he went, "How did you know that?" And I realized, okay, maybe I shouldn't be broadcasting this. Like I could get myself into a lot of trouble. So all of that study and practice has really just developed a sense that's already in us all the time. But most of us ignore it. When you're a little kid, you say, "Mommy, why is that person angry?" And mommy says, "They're not angry." And you go, "Oh, I guess my senses are off. There's something wrong here. I'm not perceiving correctly."
Yeah.
But in fact, that kid's probably perceiving something that the mother isn't aware of.
Yeah.
So these abilities to read other people, to see other people, to understand things, they're already inherent in us. They're just something to practice and develop.
So when you looked in that kid's eyes, was it like a feeling, or did you just was it just like it popped in your head like this? Hey man, he had a fight with his mom. How did that hit you?
Yeah, good. I actually saw it. I actually sort of felt it. It was like experiencing it myself. It was like as if I was inside his mind and experiencing what he experienced.
How long did you practice ESP before you started to kind of unlock that piece of you?
As I recall, it happened fairly quickly. Like within 6 months or a year of practicing, I was already being able to see things.
Yeah.
And getting myself into trouble with them. So, but again, it was something that it was already inherent in me because I was already an observer of other people.
Yeah.
So it was sort of fine tuning that sense. And there's now a whole field of research on highly sensitive people, HSPs, they're called. And about 20% of the population is highly sensitive, or the senses are more extended out. Bright lights can affect highly sensitive kids. They become shy because they don't want to be overwhelmed. So I was probably a highly sensitive kid anyway, and then it was just a matter of developing those skills.
Have you heard of Jose Silva, the Ultra Mind,
Yeah, yeah, and civil mind control.
Silva Mind Control? Yeah.
Sure.
So I started practicing this Jose Silva recently within the last month and a half. And but it was because like I guess he had taught when he realized he was onto something is it was like his daughter that he was like thinking of the question and she was answering it before he even said it.
Yeah,
And she started answering the questions and he was like, what the? And he was like, I think I taught my kid ESP. And at the time they were like, hey, you can't teach ESP. Either you got it or you don't. And so he was like, okay, well, let me test this. And he started teaching it to other kids and it was the same thing. Other kids, other kids, other kids. And they were having the same exact results. And so then he realized like you actually can teach it. It's innate within all of us. If you can kind of remove the excess noise within our mind and like lower the brain waves and slow them down to where you go from alpha to delta, delta to theta, so on and so forth. And so, or I'm sorry, delta to alpha. Is it delta to alpha? I think it's delta to
well, it's alpha, beta, gamma, delta.
alpha. Yeah.
So there's I studied neurology back in college in the 70s, and the brain was a lot simpler then.
Yeah.
It's gotten very complicated, and we know a lot more about it than we did then. At the time, we were looking at brainwaves and understood that brainwaves were just sort of a sum of the millions of electrical signals that were happening at once. And there's a lot of research that shows that the whole alpha, beta, theta, delta thing isn't really that popular. It's sort of been popularized,
Yeah.
but it's not really what people make of it.
Okay.
The brain's a lot more complicated. There's now, in fact, one of my friends who's a neuroscientist and written a lot of books about it says that everything we've known in the last 50 years about neurology is now outdated and we could throw it all out. so,
Oh,
so,
wow.
so there's a lot of myths that have been built on brainwave studies and brain studies. I studied a process back in the 70s where we took how the brain works and developed our consciousness based on those theories at the time. And it's good to do that. You're developing practices out of what you think you know. It turns out that it doesn't really matter what you know. The practice is what works. So when you're developing yourself, you can use any theory to build a practice upon.
That's true. Yeah, no, because it depends on the scientific data, obviously, and the multiple studies and the metadata that all goes into the study. So, and nowadays there's so many, you could look up anything to find some kind of study that supports your thesis, just about no matter what end of the spectrum that you're on.
True.
Not even with the brain, with the body, with the mind, with everything, with
Yeah,
diet.
and the brain is the most complex thing we know of in the universe.
Yeah.
It has more connections than there are stars. I mean, it's really crazy how complex it is. And so as neuroscience develops, we're learning more and more about how it works. But the thing is that if you're interested in consciousness or the mind, you can't open up the brain and find mind or consciousness anywhere. Besides, you also kill the patient. But beside that, there's nobody knows. This is the what's called the hard mind problem, or the mind brain problem, is that nobody knows how our brain signals are connected to our experience.
Yeah.
That's a complete mystery. And for me, I find working with experience more valuable. It doesn't really matter what's going on in the brain because we don't feel our neurons. We feel our experiences. We don't experience our neurons changing or our brains changing. We experience ourselves changing. And so I kind of leave neurology over on the side and go, good, if you want to study science, great idea to study the brain. It's fascinating, but we can do everything we need to do just with our own experience, our own memories, our own feelings, our own thoughts, our own beliefs. So that's my approach.
And so it seems like you've gotten really into more spiritual practices, it seems, kind of, with reading your bio and then everything that you're saying, between ESP, being almost like present in experiences, your being. um what are some recommendations that you give to people if they're like, hey, how can I kind of rewire the way I think, or how can I get over this negativity or overcome this challenge? What are some of the, like, just quick strategies, like, hey, this will help you to be more in tune with who you are now, or to unlock potential within your mind or yourself or your persona, however you put that.
Well, that's a big question with lots of answers.
With lots of answers, yeah.
My whole program is based on that,
Okay.
on that set of questions. First of all, as I was exploring consciousness and psychology and myself, what I realized is that at certain times there were sort of big shifts that affected my whole point of view, my whole life, who I was. And most of the time I'd have a high from a workshop, for example, or smoking pot or whatever, and I'd have an insight. But then 2 days later, I was the same person.
Mhm.
And so I was using so many different techniques. I realized that some techniques had this big, profound shift in me that was permanent, and most techniques that I used didn't. They were partial or temporary.
Mhm.
And so that got me interested. Well, what is it about those things that had a big, profound effect that really changed who I was and changed my abilities to be in the world and my relationships? What was different about those than all those other things?
Mhm.
And I realized that when there was a big shift, there was a shift in my beliefs at a really core level. So, for example, who I am. It's like, am I a separate person among a bunch of other separate people, or am I connected to everyone all the time? Now, if you shifted that belief, you wouldn't feel lonely anymore, because you would know that you are always already connected to not only other people, but the whole universe, right? So that got me interested in beliefs. What are they? Where do they come from? How do they function? And through years of study, I finally figured out that most people think of beliefs as a thought form. It's like, I believe in Santa Claus, or I believe in less government, or I believe I'll have another beer, whatever, whatever. That's a thought, an idea. But beliefs are actually multidimensional, because our experience is multidimensional. Right now, you're seeing, feeling, hearing, thinking, sensing with your body. You're connected to your spiritual self at some level. And so your experience is multidimensional. So beliefs are made of experience. So beliefs must be multidimensional as well.
Mhm.
They involve our whole experiential self. And so when there was a big shift in my beliefs, it happened because the shift was multidimensional. It affected all parts of me. And when I looked at belief change methods, the ones that worked better worked by working with the whole self, not just a part of the self. So instead of just think differently, right? We hear that a lot. Just think differently, or just do it, or no pain, no gain. Just say this affirmation over and over again, and eventually it'll take. Those things don't work, because it's just the thought, just the mental, verbal idea. It doesn't impact the subconscious mind, which doesn't speak in words. It speaks in pictures and senses, right?
Mhm.
Or beat on a pillow and get out that old crap that you've had inside. Well, that's good emotionally for the emotional body, but it doesn't impact the thought form or the body, the embodied self, right? Or the subconscious programs.
Yeah.
So by taking a multidimensional approach, by using experience to change experience, then we get big impacts. We get big, profound shifts. And it's at the belief layer, this infrastructure layer. It's sort of like the pipes under the ground that deliver water to your house. If they were sitting on the ground, it would be really messy. But by putting them underground, we just see the effects of the water coming out of the pipe. And the same is true in our life. We're seeing the effects of the infrastructure underneath, the belief structure,
Mhm.
that's driving our life, that's filtering our perceptions, that's informing our choices. So by working on the beliefs at the core level, then we get these big changes very profoundly, very permanently, and very routinely, because we know we're working at the infrastructure level, not at the surface level.
It makes a lot of sense when you put it like that. Oh, like underneath the ground and the piping example, I like that. So I'm currently I've been doing a lot of meditation practices. I told you I was doing the Silva Ultra Mind through Mind Valley.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I saw a video on it. I was like, oh, it makes sense. Like, okay, I'll try this. I like it. I do. I like it. And one of the things that has us do is you write out magic that you've witnessed, like things that just kind of happen almost serendipitously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you find is that when you start to write these things out and almost attract them to your life, you find more of them. You become more present, more aware, right? And do you feel that that's something that happens also within the individuals that take part in your program? Is it almost like an attraction, like a law of attraction process, where through changing their experiences that they have this massive change that brings about experiences that they're looking for, almost like a law of attraction?
Let's talk about the infrastructure of what that is, what's going on there, because I find that more interesting than this. So there's a lot of outside in technologies,
Okay.
like you just described. Okay, if I write it down, then I'll see more of it. It's sort of like buying a Mercedes, and all you see is Mercedes from that point forward. And
Exactly.
that's part of our internal bias. Um, but I prefer the inside out approach, which is find out what's in the way and clear it out of the way. And then your vision becomes clear, because our beliefs act like filtered lenses in front of our eyes.
Mhm.
So if I have the belief life is hard, then I'm looking through that lens, and everywhere I look, I'm seeing life is hard. That the belief becomes the filter of our perceptions.
Yeah.
If you clear that belief, life is hard, and you put a new lens on it called life is joy, then when you're looking out through that lens, what you see is joy everywhere.
Mhm.
So that's how beliefs work. They impact our perceptions and our abilities. And that's why they're called limiting beliefs. All beliefs are limiting in some way. Some actually get in the way, they interfere with our life. Others are just neutral, like that is a cat. That's a belief, but we call it a fact because everybody calls that animal a cat. The problem is, as soon as you say that's a cat, you've left the realm of experience. You're now in your verbal mind, and you've labeled it. And now you're working with a label, an abstraction. You miss the awe-inspiring fact that it's an incredible creature with its own perceptions and life. When you can see the reality of a cat, you're seeing this multidimensional creature that's unlike us, but yet we can interact with it in ways.
Yeah.
Right? So whenever we're working with the verbal mind and trying to change our beliefs, we're at the surface level, not at the depth level.
Yeah.
So that's my explanation for why, if you write it down enough, you begin opening it up. But why not just clear the belief that says there's no such thing as magic? And then you could see it everywhere.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I think it's like a stepping stone, right?
Absolutely.
It's like a stepping stone. Like if there's some people, like if you try to explain that to, like they won't comprehend it, right? But if you get them to be like it's like, think about somebody back in the early 1900s. It'd be like, dude, do you know if we're gonna be able to fly from one place to another, and you can go from New York to LA in a matter of hours? They're going to be like, that's not possible. Like, they can't conceive it.
Right.
But if we then introduce the Wright brothers and they see that, and then it's like, okay, well, in the future, you're going to be able to go longer distances. It's like that stepping stone, right?
Absolutely. We need those things. We absolutely need those things. Yeah.
So, which
But
for me, like you saying that,
yeah.
I understand changing the lens in which you view the world,
Mhm.
right? So, like, one thing I have my agents do is I have them write out things that they're grateful for, because I understand that the more you write out, and it's always new things. You always want to write out something new. You can't write the same thing like I'm grateful for my dog, I'm grateful for my wife, I'm grateful for my kids. Like you can't write the same thing over and over again. But you have to be like intentionally grateful. It has to be an intentional action. And over time, what happens is that you start to run out of things. And now you have to like search the world for things that you're grateful for, search your experiences for things that you're grateful for maybe what happened the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so now you're re-looking at that 24 hours through a completely different lens because you're trying to find something to write down, and it almost changes the lens in which you view things
Absolutely.
over time. So now you're like reframing that lens, and you start to see and find more positive actions and more positive experiences in life, and you can find the positive out of it. You just have to be very consistent with doing that, right?
Absolutely. It's a great practice. It's a great
Yeah.
practice. Yeah. It's like yoga. Yoga is an outside in practice, but it really serves to open things up, open your channels up, allow more energy to flow through, gives you more flexibility, more strength. So every practice is good. There's nothing wrong with any practice that leads you to greater awareness, more flexibility, more possibilities.
Mm.
Um, I'm on a therapeutic side of things,
Okay.
which is a lot of people do practices, but they keep going back to the same pattern over and over again.
And you're trying to break that pattern.
That's right. I'm trying to shift the pattern so that
It's,
it's no longer in the way. And
yeah.
that's what I found to be the greatest leverage for personal change. Practices, excellent, needed, must do.
Yeah.
But then you practice and you practice, you practice, but you still, see your wife and you go, it's like, so that means there's something still stuck in there that the practice hasn't gotten to.
Yeah.
It's deeper in the psyche than the practice can reach.
Yeah.
Now, maybe you become aware that you're angry with your wife all the time, or you're
I think
resentful.
self-awareness is a good piece of it too, right?
Absolutely. It's a good
Yeah.
place to start. And then the question is, now what do I do with that? How do I get to that level of the psyche and shift that lens that's still there, that's still stuck?
Yeah.
So that's my work.
Yeah. I just finished reading The Power of Now
Mhm.
by Eckhart Tolle. And one of the things he talks about is like when those things happen, to almost be like a witness within your mind, watch it happen and like be aware of it.
Yes.
And like when you're aware of it, don't assign a positive or negative value to it, like with an experience or something like that. It just is. Like just accept it and almost surrender to it. Not surrender like, oh, I can't do anything about it, but like in this moment, this is the way that things are. Like,
Another great practice.
yeah,
And it doesn't necessarily change the root cause of what's happening.
yeah,
So imagine a weed in your garden, right? Well,
yeah,
you can say, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do an affirmation. So you stomp on the weed, right? I don't have weeds. I don't have weeds. I don't have weeds,
yeah,
which just pisses off the weed and it grows back stronger, right?
yeah,
So because you're pushing two beliefs against each other,
yeah,
I'm prosperous. I don't have any money. I'm prosperous. I don't have any money. I'm prosperous. I don't have any money. Or you can cut the weed off at the top. Well, that's not true. I don't want to see the weed, so I'm going to cut it off, or I'm going to be present with the weed. I'm just going to watch it and see, oh, it's a weed, right? These are all different practices. But if you really want to get rid of the weed, you got to pull it up by the root, and then it doesn't grow back.
mhm.
So that's my work, is finding the roots of those things that get in our way and clearing them.
I like this a lot. So, how long when someone wants to come in and they're like, hey, Lion, I need your help, man. Yeah, like I got this going on or that going on, and I just feel like I keep going back to the same old habits, and I need to change this. What's that process look like? Is there do you take everybody? You're like, hey, there's a selection process. Like you got to make sure it's a good fit, and then how long do they usually work with you before they can start to see that change in their life?
Every session I do has an incremental change that can be seen and felt.
Okay.
So in almost every session, not everyone, but 95% of sessions end up with someone going, "Wow, I feel different." So, but the mind is complex. We have thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of beliefs. that are causing us to perceive the world or react to the world in certain ways. So it really depends on how many beliefs are in the cluster. Most of us have 3 to 5 big clusters of beliefs that are holding us back. Maybe a belief about other people, a few beliefs about ourselves, and some beliefs about the world. So it depends on what the person's coming with. But I have a 3-month and a 6-month package that I sell because most of those clusters can be cleared in regular sessions over 3 to 6 months. Now, some people work with me for years because they keep finding stuff and they want to clear it. But what I do is I'm actually teaching people how to use these tools themselves so that when something comes up, because something is always going to come up, we have lots of crap inside. They have the tools to actually work it themselves. And then they come back to me when there's a big thing that they just haven't been able to tackle themselves. Yeah. So I'd say 3 to 6 months is generally the range of things that can really clear out a person so that the big stuff really isn't in their way anymore. I'll give you a great example of my work, which I love this story. A multimillionaire came to me, and he was a multimillionaire because he made millions and he lost millions and he made millions, he lost millions. And he was tired of that process, that pattern, right? I'm a pattern detective. So in my work with him, we finally got him down to a memory of when he was 3 years old, walking with his mother on the streets of New York, hand in hand. And he looks down and he sees a shiny penny. And he gets excited and he reaches down for the penny and his mother jerks him back and says, "Don't touch that, it's dirty." And he suddenly realized that the reason he couldn't hold on to his money was because he had this deep program that said money is dirty and you shouldn't touch it. So no matter how good he was at making the millions, he couldn't hold on to it because he wasn't supposed to touch it. So that's the kind of key belief that was causing him, as a very successful entrepreneur, to lose the money over and over again.
I'm fascinated to hear how he was able to, because he probably had never thought, or like he probably without your help could not have like come up with that memory.
No.
Man, I'm fascinated. This is like I want to just pick your brain for like hours, Lion. I just want to.
It's available to you. Available for the picking.
Yeah. This is fantastic. If anyone wants to learn more about your process and they feel they have a lot of deep-seated, those experiences that are holding them back, what's the best way to kind of contact you or look at more information to do more research on this?
My personal website is liongoodman.com.
Okay.
So that's easy. And if people are interested in learning the technology, because I love teaching this technology to other people, they can go to clearbeliefs.com and learn about what we do, what we teach, and how we teach it. It's approximately a 6-month program where you learn a number of different methodologies, because not one methodology works for everybody, because people are complex and they're different. So if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? There's a lot of people who have one technique that works for them and they go, "Oh my God, this is great." And they learn that technique and then they go apply it to everybody and it doesn't work for most people. Yeah. So we teach a whole suite of tools, a dozen different methodologies that you can use flexibly and add to whatever practice you already have. So if somebody's a social worker or a psychotherapist or a coach, or a teacher, they can use these technologies, whether it's with kids or adults, whoever you're working with, a manager who's working with their employees. These are ways of clearing what's in the way. That's why we call it the clear beliefs method, because we're clearing permanently and profoundly it out of the way so that it's no longer bothering the person. It's no longer causing the reaction that you have over and over again to a particular situation. So that's our goal, is to clear out the stuff that triggers you, clear out the stuff that holds you back, the limitations that are preventing you from moving forward. And then once they're clear, now you've got more opportunities. You see through a clearer lens. Yeah. You're seeing more opportunities and more ways of being successful, and you're not being held back by those leashes and chains that got caused by your mother saying don't touch money, or your father saying you're a piece of crap, or whatever it was in childhood that caused that limitation to occur.
And just to be clear, so you're saying that on the clearbeliefs.com website that when people do that program, it basically teaches him or teaches them to do something similar, like kind of what you do,
Yes, yes,
but
yes.
with others.
Right, and they work on themselves during the process, during the course. So
Yeah.
you work on yourself clearing your own crap because if you have crap inside of you, you can't help other people with theirs,
Exactly.
right? So you learn how to clear yourself by doing. We set people up in triads so they can experience it as a client, experience it as a coach, and experience it as an observer,
Mm.
and then that's how they learn to use it with others, to coach others.
This is fantastic. I love it. I love it. Clearbeliefs.com. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lion, for coming on the podcast and just sharing everything. This has been very enlightening. This has been, and I know that the audience is going to love this. The last question that I have for all my guests is you have the opportunity to sit, learn from, have a conversation with, break bread with 3 individuals, anyone in history, alive or deceased. Who are those 3 and why?
Um, it would probably be philosophers, Aristotle, Hegel, and Einstein. Those would be. I actually know someone or met someone who was a kid in Princeton, and he was 5 years old, and this old man kept walking by his house every day, and so he'd go up and talk to this old man, and then the old man said, "Well, do you want to walk with me?" And so he started walking at the age of 5 with this old man around Princeton. Turned out it was Einstein. So at the age of 5, he got to like hang out with Einstein and learn from him. He turned into a pretty interesting character. So that would be cool to not just have a conversation, but to really, sit and learn from someone. And I'd
Yeah.
like to spend more time with you and learn what's inside that mind of yours. You can remind yourself.
I appreciate that. Yeah. You know what? You may get that you may get that opportunity.
Cool.
So thank you so much for jumping online. This has been fantastic and this is a great conversation. For those of you watching, if you watched to now, you obviously got value. Share, rate, review, subscribe to the channel, and we, Lion and I, is become internally grateful just by you do something simple as sharing this content with somebody that could also get value from it. Because this is what I know without a doubt is that all of us have those instances in our lives, those challenges. We all have those demons that we face on a daily basis. And having the tools or having people that have the tools that can teach us to overcome them so that we can become the best version ourselves is invaluable. So go check out Lion Goodman's website. Go check out clearbeliefs.com. Share this content with somebody else so that they can do the same and they can also change their life. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time.